Hey, everybody, and welcome to WP Roundtable, episode 101. We are happy to be here. My name is Kyle Maurer, and I work for Real Big Marketing here in Jackson, Michigan. We make WordPress stuff for our clients, and this is going to be a fun night. This is our second run. We had some technical difficulties the first time around. That was totally my mistake. I totally messed up, embarrassed myself, got my good friend Mike here on the show, and just blew it in an epic style, which I sincerely apologize for, and I'm so grateful for Mike for sticking around and being a good sport about it. So Mike, Mr. Mike Hale, thank you for being on the show. It's a pleasure.
I'm glad to be here on episode 101.1.
Yeah.
And yes, congratulations on 100 episodes. That's a big milestone, the century mark. My podcast just hit 50, so we're pretty proud of that too. So 100 is definitely something to be proud of.
Yeah, something that takes a lot of commitment. It certainly wasn't something that we set out to do originally. It's just kind of an experiment. But we're gonna have to talk about your podcast as well, and everything that you do over at Rainmaker Digital, and everything else. So before we do, we're gonna jump into our quick picks of the week. I'm gonna share one that is pretty new. I came across this awesome new WordPress service / plugin. It's called WP Site Sync. It is from our very good friends over at ServerPress. They're the makers of the amazing local development software called Desktop Server. And they just created this sweet looking new product that is going to save a lot of people a lot of pain and misery. So it allows you to more easily synchronize and migrate data, particularly your content like posts and pages, between sites like a staging and a production site or a dev and a live site. And it's an awesome new plugin. There's a cool story that they were telling me about how and why they created it. And it's got a really bright future. So you can find their Twitter account, and you can find more info on desktopserver.com or serverpress.com, I should say, and much, much more. So keep an eye out on that and check it out. So Mike, what do you have to share for us today?
So I don't have a plugin this time, but I'm going to go ahead, and my quick pick will be WordCamp St. Louis. Just wrapped up WordCamp Chicago this weekend, which was fun. It was great seeing you there and catching up again. But I will be speaking Sunday morning at WordCamp St. Louis. I got some family down there too, so I'm going to swing in a visit and a WordCamp all in one weekend and get it all done.
That's the way to do it. I love working on WordCamp into my travels. It somehow just makes it work out well. So cool. What are you going to talk about in St. Louis?
So my presentation is automating WordPress development with Gulp. One of the goals I had this year, actually it was one of the goals I had last year, but never really got around to it too much, so I made it a goal again this year, is to learn some more front-end development tools, some workflow automation stuff, really trying to take my software development process up to the next level. And one of the things I wanted to learn was Gulp. Well, it was Gulp or Grunt, and I made a decision to go with Gulp. So this was a project that I basically did more or less to learn Gulp, but what it does is you just fill out a settings file, and then it will create a starter plugin framework boilerplate template for you that has your plugin name, your plugin slug, prefixes, description, and it changes all the file names around and gives you that starter plugin to work from. Because one of the things I found is if I'm creating a new plugin, is copying the declaration from one place and putting it in another, and then like, okay, how do I do widgets again? Because I can never remember exactly the right combination of functions to make the widget work. So it'll have like a widget built in, and those things like that. So it's really just kind of a jumping off point, but where I can just run one command and have my plugin skeleton created, and then add whatever I need to it from there.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard so many cool things from people about the value of using something like Gulp or Grunt in their build process. So way to go. And I also love the thought of, and I've done this a number of occasions, wanting to learn something and then just applying to speak at a WordCamp in the future, which kind of has a tendency to force me to learn something on a deep level, motivate me to do more than I would on my own. So yeah, bravo. So Mike, let's dive in. Let's talk about you and everything that you do and your process and your hopes and dreams and your history. because everybody else wants to know. And I don't know a ton about your background, but we've had the pleasure of hanging out on a couple of occasions and got to know you and appreciate spending time together. But let's learn a little bit about what you came from. So where did you grow up, and what were your career aspirations before you really got your career going?
Well, I born and raised far, far south side of Chicago. If you ever look on a map, it's where Indiana, the lake, and Chicago all come together. That's called the East Side, which even people in Chicago say the East Side. There is no East Side. So that was the neighborhood I grew up in. It was where all the old, the shadows of the old steel mills, as that was the big industry there. And my original plan, which obviously did not quite work the way I planned, was to be a rock star. I played guitar since grade school, and you can see there's a couple hanging up there behind me still. I pull them down every now and then and play them a little bit just for fun. More of a collector now. Played in bands all through through high school, through the late '80s and early '90s. Yes, I did have the big hair and the long hair at the time. Thankfully, not the digital age. Not everybody had a camera, so very few pictures of me exist from those days. I did that for a while, and then kind of when the local scene started to die out, bunch of different miscellaneous jobs, and then I started working doing networking, setting up local networks. My specialty was converting. This will tell you how long ago this was converting people from NetWare to Windows NT server. That was,
oh man,
yeah, that's how I got my start. And then the mid-late 90s, when the internet and web were really taking off, I was really interested in that. I started doing some straight basic HTML websites for people back in the very early days, and got into a little bit more of making them a little more interactive using Perl and the old CGI bin scripts, which were just a nightmare to work with. Did that for a while, and I actually started when Microsoft ASP pages came out. I had done a lot of Visual Basic for applications type stuff, and I'd done some Visual Basic for apps. So I knew Visual Basic. I thought, well, great, I can apply that to the web now, and really got big into the ASP. When ASP.NET came out, I was really big into the ASP.NET. Did a lot of corporate client consulting jobs like that, building web apps. So most of my programming history, which is 15 plus years now, probably more, but I'm just going to say 15 because it makes me feel less old, has always been web apps, web applications of some kind, the overwhelming majority of stuff. And then probably about 2010, 2011, I started dabbling in WordPress, more for just some of my own projects and sites where I didn't want to have to build something from scratch, and started learning it that way. And just from making it do the things that I wanted it to do, started getting a little more into the development side of things. And then started doing that more for my clients that needed websites, was moving them to WordPress sites rather than building a site from scratch in .NET, unless it was something that was really, really web application that they needed. Started moving to WordPress. So I've been doing, WordPress now probably a good 5-6 years, almost exclusively. I still do a little .NET stuff for some of our internal things, but most of it's now WordPress development. So.
Fascinating. So what are some of these early projects that you took on in particular? Tell us a little bit about some of the really challenging projects that you look back on and like, man, that was rough. That was hard. I learned a lot of lessons from it. I learned how to level up my skills because I made promises to do things I didn't know how to do, and so on. And the projects that really made you question whether you were doing the right thing, but in the end made you better for it.
Starting out, I did a lot of local businesses. I was real big in working with the smaller local businesses. My thing was I would kind of do their sites, but also help them with their content, some of their online marketing. Did a lot of local SEO work for them. The biggest challenge with that is if you're working with the owner of a company and they're there full time, is leaving them in such a way that where they can do the work, but them actually doing the work that they need to do once it's handed off. A lot of times I would build a website for somebody and kind of do a content strategy and show them how to use it and do all these things. And then I always joke that every month they did half of what they did the month before. And then you go back and, their sites haven't been updated. Not a lot exclusive to them being local businesses, but just being smaller businesses where, they don't have the bigger budgets. Once the site's up, a lot of times they don't really maintain them or update them or add content. And it was challenging because I worked pretty much as a one-man shop to get into those bigger clients. And I started getting some bigger clients that needed a little more custom development side than just the site stuff. But I was kind of actually shifting my focus to when I was freelancing was working with other agencies as a developer, where the design shop might not have enough work to justify a full-time developer, but still had the occasional project where they just needed something and couldn't find a plugin to do it, or needed something a little customized. So I really kind of shifted into trying to work more with those agencies as a resource, letting them deal with the clients, and then just being kind of a supplemental resource for them when they needed that type of stuff.
Do you think that's a good thing for a lot of other freelancers to consider, instead of trying to go out and be the hunter and the developer yourself, to try and find those strategic relationships? Like, what kind of freelancers should really start seriously considering that, and why did it benefit you so much?
I think for me, and I did a lot of custom sites for people, but really I wanted to focus more in the plugin development side of things, and really more custom functionality for WordPress than just doing a custom theme for somebody, which I did a lot of. But you don't really find a lot of the clients that are looking for that, because they don't even know that they need something custom at that point. They just know they need a website that does these 5 things that are crucial to their business. Well, you can probably find 4 of them and one that sort of does what they need, but not the other. It worked out for me because it was referral kind of referral work coming in. I didn't have to find those. Once I had built those relationships with the agencies and they knew that they could trust me to service their clients, they would just send me more and more. And even some of them would even send me work from other agencies, because it seems, and I'm not sure how much this exists outside the WordPress world, is there's so much. Somebody will come to you with a site and either you just don't have the time, it's not your ideal customer, maybe it's not the industry that you want to specialize in, where you send it off to somebody else. And I've done that a lot, especially now working full-time. I don't really do client work now, but I still get people that just know me as the WordPress guy. So they'll come to me with a project and say, oh, I have this friend who needs this WordPress site, can you help him? And I would say, yeah, find out about it. And then I know who to send them to. So I think building that referral network and having resources to not just send you work, but to have people that can come to you and have somebody good to send them to, they'll still come back to you. So it's a big important factor, I think, to what made me successful.
Yeah, I completely agree. Spot on. I think that there's so much value in those kind of relationships and setting yourself up for success by leveraging your primary skill set and not diluting your time by focusing half of it on trying to get accounts and half of it on trying to do a semi-decent job for them. Just allowing you to just be more of a specialist and get better, easier to close projects and things that are more in your wheelhouse. So exactly. I think that's right on. So now, at what point, and walk us through what was going on and what your decision-making process was like. Did you decide, I want to change and I want to go work for somebody, in this case, Rainmaker Digital?
Actually, the way that came about is when I was doing freelancing, they were a client of mine for the Scribe, the content optimization and SEO software. There was a web version of that, and I had just come off a corporate consulting project and moved right onto that, and that came about. Brian Clark and Brian Gardner had spoken at a real estate technology conference that I had gone to, because also I'm a licensed realtor in Illinois, and I do some real estate here and there. Not very active, but like 1 or 2 deals a year. And again, those are usually people who know me personally, and straight referrals. And so I was excited to see that, because I knew of Copyblogger, Studio Press, and I knew who these guys were. It was funny because I went and I'm thinking, boy, half 3/4 of the crowd here probably doesn't realize, how good what they're getting is here. But I knew, I went basically to see those guys, and I had a conversation with Brian Gardner after the event, and I said, "Oh, I'm a developer too." I said, "But I do more, .NET stuff, not a ton of WordPress." And they actually were looking for some .NET help for some of the Scribe API stuff. So I worked with them for a while over a year on that. Was off for about a year and a half, and then did a couple little proof of concept things, and then took on another big project with them again. So I'd worked with them on and off for about 3 years, probably about half of that, mostly working for them. So they knew my work, and then they had a conference out in Denver 2 years ago that I went to, and my goal was kind of to, make something a little more permanent. And the ball started rolling then, and I was able to go on board. And honestly, the real decision is just I liked them as a company and liked what they did, and just wanted to be a part of it. There were very few situations that I would have left freelancing for, and that was one of the handful of places that I would have taken something from. So it kind of worked out that it was a job that I really wanted that became available at just the right timing. So I miss client work sometimes, because it was fun learning about the companies and their business, and how their business ticks, and seeing what I could use from previous clients to them. But I also don't miss client work sometimes, just because you have to deal with the really difficult projects, and not difficult as challenging for your skill set, but difficult working with somebody who might not work the same way that you do.
Awesome. So that touches on an interesting point, a discussion that I've been having with a number of people lately for various reasons. People kind of looking to make a decision, people just stating a case and coaching others, and just a topic of discussion in some of my recent conversations has been, it is particularly in the world of WordPress, what factors should one consider, and how can one make confidently that they're making the right decision, decide whether to go out on their own or to work for one of these great companies like you've chosen. So what thoughts do you have about what a person should look at and consider very seriously about themselves, about their lifestyle, and about the situations around them to really confidently make the right choice for them?
Yeah, that's a hard call to make, because you see these. I've known some very high level great freelancers, and then they'll post on Twitter that they just took a job with somebody. It always surprises me a little, and I'm always curious kind of what their what got them to pull the trigger on it. And then sometimes you'll see this just the opposite, where somebody who's been working for a bigger company in the WordPress world, and then leaves to go out on their own. And I was laughing at WordCamp Chicago we were at, because I was talking to a couple people who were with a company, were with another company, and are now freelance, or were freelance and have now on their second company since the last time I realized what they were doing. I think really it for me, it's always come down to a culture fit. Do I feel comfortable working with this company and these people? Am I going to do a good job for them? And is it something where I feel like I'm going to be productive and contributing and helping? And am I going to like it? I never kept a job that I didn't, like working at. And I think that's one of the things where it's worked out for me, is I like the projects we work in. I like the products we're putting out. So it's enjoyable. And I think that's the big challenge is, if you're freelancing, just giving up that level of independence, but you're also giving up that independence, so you're not relying only on yourself. But it really, to me, is just, is it going to be a culture fit? And I think a lot of this is, people in the WordPress community, which is the big thing about it, is that community. We talk, you talk to all these people, and I think it's one of those things where somebody there usually, and they bring you on board, and you kind of have a feeling for the people that work at some of these companies, so you get an idea of whether you're going to even be a fit or not with them, just because chances are, if you're going to go somewhere, you already know one or two people that are working there. I actually looked at this a while back. I was going to do a talk about how to get hired in the WordPress world with an actual company. And that was one of the big points, was just the networking side of it. Is that's how it seems like most people in the WordPress world get hired. I mean, you don't have resumes, don't seem to be the way to to get there. Nobody's pulling from your LinkedIn profile. It's, oh, I know a guy who can do this. Oh, we need this. Yeah, let me give them a call. So
right. It is very interesting, and I totally corroborate everything that you said. It is one of those. I coach other people the same thing when they're looking for opportunities in the space. I just say, make sure that you are not a stranger to anyone that you would potentially approach to work for in the future. Make sure that they, if nothing else, recognize your face and your name. but ideally have a good relationship with, and then you've got just an incredible advantage. And it's not that hard to do. So right on. So Mike, at this point, tell us a little bit about a day for you, a productive day for you. In particular, I want to know, like, what's a really great work day for you? The kind of day where you go home and you talk to your wife and you say, man, I just kicked butt today. I really made a difference. I contributed in profound ways, helped the company get better. I had some great ideas. I executed. I was just like a rock star. This was a good day for me. Walk us through what that day is like and what sort of things you do.
I think the days where you really just kind of get in that zone, in the flow. You know, every year I do that. My 3 words for the year project, where you don't make resolutions. You just kind of have 3 words that guide you through the year. The first, Chris Brogan was the first guy that I saw do it. I've been doing it for a couple of years. And one of those words for 2016 for me was flow, just to kind of be in the zone and in that productive environment, and, you know, being in the zone is really the way I can best describe it, and putting myself in a position to be like that. So for me, it's just, if I can get, you know, a fair amount of work done, you know, a good chunk of what I've got, you know, assigned to me, if I can help somebody else out on the team, is always a good day. If I learn something new, any day I can do 1 or more of those things is a pretty good day in my book.
Well, then perhaps it begs the question, you know, what would be a not so great day in your shoes, where you come home from work and you just tell your wife, oh my goodness, I need to take it easy and unwind because this was a little rough.
Yeah. And just with, you know, with software development, sometimes you think the easiest little thing, you know, oh, I'll just knock that out this morning. And then the whole day is gone.
Yes.
And you just can't get something to work, and it's always the little things. I think those days are very frustrating. Some days you feel like, you know, the total imposter syndrome. You know, every day I wake up and I'm like, these guys are just going to realize that I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing, and this is going to be it. And the next day you wake up and you're just, you know, nailing everything, and, you know, squashing bugs and doing enhancements and fixes and all, you know, all kinds of stuff just left and right. So I think it's those days where just everything you try just doesn't seem to work. And you know, the worst days is when, you know, you have made a mistake on something and a bug gets further along than it's supposed to be. And, you know, I try not to beat myself up, because I know that happens to everybody, but it's that ego hit. You know, if I put something to testing and there's something that I should have caught, you know, way before that, those are the ones that really, you know, those are the bad days, I think, where it's just frustrating. It's like, oh, you know, I should have seen that. I should have caught that, where you kind of beat yourself up about, you know, not doing the quality that you think you should, even though you really are, but you always hold yourself up to a higher standard. So
yeah. Oh, as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, right on. Absolutely. I know. And I think that it does have to do a lot with that way that you said it. Like you say, I'm just going to knock this out this morning. And so it's often those things where we assign, you know, have this expectation in our mind about how simple something is. And when we're so wrong, so wrong with our expectation, that just like it hits you with a lot of frustration. Like, how was I so bad at estimating this? And I have this guilt, like I should have solved this problem. I was supposed to, like, what's wrong with me? Yeah. All those things just lead to a lot of anxiety and frustration. So I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah. So let's another one thing that I'm really bad about. We talk about the company that you work for very consistently, but we didn't describe it. So there could be somebody watching who's never heard of StudioPress or Copyblogger or Rainmaker. So talk a little bit, if you will, about the company that you work for, in particular about the product that you focus most of your time on.
Sure. And the way it works now is there's Rainmaker Digital is the actual company. It was Copyblogger Media, but we rebranded this year into Rainmaker Digital. And under that, you have StudioPress, which is known for Genesis Framework and the StudioPress themes. You have the Copyblogger blog. You have Synthesis Web Hosting. You have the Rainmaker platform. And then there's the Digital Commerce Institute and Authority, kind of the educational side of things too. I spend most of my time working on the Rainmaker platform, which is a hosted software as a service platform for content marketers or people selling digital goods, membership sites. The main benefit of it is when you sign in, you have your digital commerce. You can sell ebooks, you can sell downloads, you can create courses, You can do podcasts. There's marketing automation. There's the membership site. All of that is built in to the system for you. That's what my job is basically adding those features and making those features work better for our customers. The trade-off is it's not a WordPress site where you can just do anything that you want to and just install any plugin on. But the benefit is that you don't have to install all those plugins and configure it and get everything working. You just go in and you worry about your products and your content and getting everything set up.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that great explanation, Mike. So how many times have you attended WordCamp Chicago in the past?
I've been to every WordCamp Chicago since 2011.
Great.
Since 2011. I've gone to Milwaukee a couple times. This will be my first WordCamp St. Louis that I've been to, but I've been to every Chicago and a couple Milwaukee's. But now I'm hitting the Midwest, so anything drivable I'm going to this year. So
I know we met each other last year in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I did go to WordCamp US last year.
Right. And that was a pretty neat experience.
Yes.
So honestly, what did you think of WordCamp Chicago 2016?
I was glad we had it. There was no 2015 WordCamp Chicago. I think a lot of that was because Chicago was trying to be the WordCamp US location in Philly. Oh, those people in Philly beat us out. I think that was kind of the challenge, was to after that didn't happen, was to get that working. So, but it was exciting to have it. It's always great to have your hometown WordCamp. Chicago's a fun one. I think it's because it's a little bigger city. You're more likely to have people come in from out of town. Now you're coming from not too far, but there's people from, that were from all over the place that came in for it, which is always nice because I get a chance to see not only a lot of my friends from out of town who I usually only talk to online, on Twitter and whatnot, but also there's a whole set of local people that I know in WordPress that I usually only see at the WordCamp too. And then there's local people, that I know through different WordPress meetups and that too. So it's kind of funny. I laugh because it was like, I have my local friends and I have my just WordCamp friends, and then I have all my out of town friends coming in. So it was really just great to get to hang out with everybody. I thought the speakers were great. I didn't, the first day I attended about half the sessions, and Sunday I did all but one, which is more sessions sometimes than I'll usually attend. But all the speakers were great. Of course, it worked out where, there was always 3 sessions at the same time I wanted to see. So I missed a few, but I will catch them. I saw probably the last session on Sunday was probably one of the best talks I've ever been to. It was project disasters and successes. Mr. Kyle Maurer, I think, was the
You had me there for a second.
No.
I was like, tell me more about this session.
Well, you were too busy giving it, so no.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
That was a good one. Definitely a good one. It was funny because we were talking earlier about some of the challenges we faced, and I liked it was, kind of what I did and what I learned, what I did, what I learned. And I the whole time I was nodding my head going, yep, I've been there. Like, I've got a story for that one. I've got a story for that one. So good stuff.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I appreciate that. It does seem to be like the kind of material that resonates with a lot of people, like touching on pains that we all feel, and so we can all just commiserate together and grow together and so on. So yeah, thank you for that. Any other highlights from this particular event? Any takeaways?
One of the things that I really am going to put into action is Topher DeRosia gave a talk on PHP Code Sniffer. And one of the things that kind of focusing on this year, like I said, was taking my own development to the next level. But we're also automating a lot of our software development processes, because as we get a little bigger and have a few more developers, some of that, when you have 2 or 3 guys working on stuff, it's a little easier to just, everybody knows what's going on. But now as more people are coming on and contributing, it gets a little more challenging to, keep the quality and consistency of the code where you need it. So one of the things that came out of our company meeting is really, optimizing a lot of the processes and the products. So internally, we're doing a lot of things to just kind of have a more mature development process, because that's the point where we are now. And so the PHP Code Sniffer, which is basically we'll go through and check for coding standards and make sure that the coding standards applied. I was really interested in that one because that's something that I'm probably going to put into practice of getting that as part of my workflow, where before I'm checking code in and having it peer reviewed, is making sure that I've run something like that to catch any of those little gotchas, little spacing things, or best practices that I've missed. So I think that was the biggest takeaway one of, here's one that I'm actually going to, put into practice right away. So that was a good one.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I appreciate that as a great example of a good takeaway that you'll be implementing, and I love the reasoning. So all of us who are running development teams, whether we're in a product space or developing a SaaS product or creating client projects or something, we're always looking to level up. If you're doing your job well, you're always trying to see how can we improve our process a little bit and serve our customers better and reduce errors and get projects done more quickly and more cleanly and more sustainable, all these good things. So can you give us maybe some examples of things that you and your team have accomplished that you've done in that effort to level up? Things that, some examples that a development team may incorporate, maybe taking up version control for the first time and starting to implement that into their process, or using build tools, or an IDE, or automated deployments, or WP CLI, and many other tools, unit tests, all kinds of things. So what sort of things did your team kind of implemented to level up, improve your process that you really think has made a positive impact and was so worthwhile?
One of the things that we did that actually has helped a lot, even though it's a more manual process, is we are doing, peer code reviews now, which is good because that, I think, helps everybody be on the same page as far as consistency in the code. And it also, you get a look at kind of the way things are working, and you're aware of more things, because one of the things that you run into, and this is on any type of development, is if you have more than a handful of developers, it's real easy to not know something's there, not know something exists, and write your own when there might be a piece of the code already in the system that does exactly what you need. So the manual peer code reviews has been really big. We are also doing a lot more on the automated side with acceptance testing, unit testing. That's where I'm trying to figure out how the Code Sniffer is going to fit into this at some point to be part of that too. And then as far as the deployment process goes, we've always used version control, and we have the different, branches that can be tested with certain features or fixes and things. That is probably the biggest change that we're going through now, is the way that the app is tested and deployed. And it's really all behind the scenes one, but I think it's in the long term, it's a lot of challenge. It's a lot of challenges to kind of bite the bullet and make the changes, but in the long run, it's one that's definitely going to save us a lot of time. But there's a lot of upfront work that needs to be done with that. But once that's in, a lot of the testing is going to be a little more automated. It'll still, there's always somebody that manually has to look at everything, but I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And again, like you said, it's leveling up. It's bringing that level of maturity to the process. And then as you bring on more people, they're able to get into the flow and the workflow much easier, because it's defined and it's set out for them, and they're not worrying about learning how do I do this and how do I do that, because they don't have to deal with a lot of those things.
Great answer, Mike. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about the podcast that you do.
So about a year ago, well, just over a year ago, two friends of mine, I'm in another meetup, the Fox Valley Computing Professionals group, and we were doing one about podcasts, and I've had a podcast project that I've been kicking around. It's just a few, false starts and a few hit and misses. It hasn't actually launched yet. But I had learned a lot about podcasting from that, and I listened to a lot. Well, whenever we get together, we talk about writing. We all like to write. We write a lot of fiction, short stories. One of the co-hosts, Eric, has got a couple novels written that he's in the rewrite process on. The other host, John, has done a lot of writing. I do more, blog posts and things like that, but I also write some fiction, just kind of as a creative outlet. So what we talk about is it's the technology of writing. So we're all three of us are software developers and and techies, but we also like to write. So of course, as geeks, we're going to find every last little tool that you can use to to try to power your writing and automate things. So each week we get together and we just kind of talk about what we found, how you can use this tool, what this tool does, and then we also talk just a little bit about writing and what we're working on. So it's called Type Hammer, and we just, like I said, we just hit our 50th episode, so now we've hit that 1 year mark, and obviously we're right behind you. We'll catch up to you. So.
Great.
But it's fun. It's not a, it's just fun to get together and kind of, share what we've learned, and it's really interesting because somebody tweeted something about the show, and the next week when we got together to record, this was, early on, and I said, well, is that a friend of yours? No. It's not a friend of mine? No. And we realized it wasn't a friend of anybody. It was just like a fan of the show. And it was like, hey, we have a fan. We have one. And then there was two, and then there was six, and then it just grows. So it's been really kind of fun just to have that as an outlet to, to not only learn about podcasting, but also, hopefully somebody's out there listening and getting some use out of the tools that we come up with.
Yeah, we can all hope, and that's really cool. It's an amazing feeling when you get something like that. So you're really a man of many talents, Mike. This is why this is fun, is I learned so much about you. You're a speaker and a podcaster and a developer and a musician and a realtor and a writer. What don't you do? And it's so question. Looking ahead and just being honest with yourself, like what are some of the things of all these various interests that you have that you say, if things go right, if things continue to go well or stay on a good trajectory in the future, the next year or 2 or 5, I'm going to be doing more of this. What is that?
I think it's going to be more kind of finding ways to share what I've learned with other developers and other WordPress professionals. One of the things that I did this year was relaunched my blog, mikehale.me, completely. Nuked the old content completely, new design. Have a little behind, of course, on blog posts because, like you said, I do all these different things. But that's really more to kind of share about what I do, but it's also going to be a destination, hopefully, where I can have maybe some courses or maybe some ebooks or a few things out there to help other people, up their game on it. I've kicked around the idea of a couple premium type plugins. I would like to have a couple of products out there, that are up and running and people get a use out of. Finding the time to develop those is a little tricky. And the other thing is when you work all day doing development, sometimes it's fun to write a little side project and sometimes you're just done. You talked about those good days and those bad days. When you have the good days, you just want to keep going. But in those bad days, the last thing you want to do is start looking at some other code. So
right on. Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of your favorite podcasts that you listen to often?
Oh, gosh. I am actually subscribed to about 60-some podcasts.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, the problem with that is every day I get maybe like 12, 14 hours of audio. And I don't listen to it that long. And even on the 1.4 times speed, I do have to go through and definitely cut out a lot of them. If it's a guest or a topic that I'm not really interested in, I just don't have the time to listen to them. My favorite is probably WP Roundtable, I have to say, because you have me on, so I have to say that. In the WordPress world, the ones I always recommend is I like Apply Filters is a really good. And I'm going through my list so I don't forget anybody. The Dradcast with Dre and Brad Williams is always fun to listen to. I love Carrie Dill's Office Hours podcast. I've been listening to that pretty much from the start. Post Status is a good one. And then I listen to the rest of them that I listen to I listen to a lot of marketing podcasts, listen to a lot of writing podcasts, WordPress, some just kind of miscellaneous fun ones, a lot of ones in the startup world that are there, and then a few weird ones you can add. Well, I'll tell you one more thing I do is you forgot Puppeteer in the list of things that I do. Oh. So I listen to a couple of puppetry podcasts. So
wow.
Yeah. I don't do it that much anymore, but I used to put out some videos that were just kind of a fun hobby. So
yeah, And that's so funny. And it's interesting how your podcast feed is becoming this uh, curated list of your personal interests. So everyone's is unique. Everyone's list of subscribed podcasts. You open up mine and you'll see things about WordPress. You also see things about home brewing and some public speaking and a variety of other topics that I find fascinating. Everyone's
couple guitar ones in there too in the back.
Yeah, sure.
I have to go through and sometimes like, okay, I just can't listen to this one anymore. And then if I see one that looks interesting, I just have to subscribe to it and listen to it for a while and see if I like it or not. So I'm a podcast addict. I think 60 something is probably a problem. So
that's wow. And I thought I had it bad. I listen to podcasts all the time. Like unless I'm working, I'm listening to a podcast. Every time I stand up, even just to get a drink of water, I hit play on whatever is my current episode. And so I'm listening to them all the time.
See, I listen to them working because it's actually less distracting for me to listen to a podcast than music. Because music, I start worrying like, okay, what song, who am I going to play next and what am I going to play next? But with the podcast, it's just kind of noise in my ear, somebody talking. And if they start talking about something interesting, I could pay a little more attention to it and and keep track of it a little bit more. But for the most part, I just have from the time I sit down and start working, I'll just play the next one, the next one, the next one. And that actually helps me focus. And it's funny because I know a lot of people who say they could not listen to people talking while they're trying to work and do development. But for me, it's less distracting than music or anything else. So
that is pretty interesting. Yeah. Everybody's different. I've heard different things. But anyway, so what you've got St. Louis coming up next weekend, is that right?
Yeah, the 14th and 15th.
14th and 15th. That's crazy. 2 weekends in a row. I just got off 2 weekends in a row, and I'm looking forward to just a weekend at home. And the lawn looks terrible. I got to get mowing and get a lot of work done. But what else is on your calendar in 2016, Mike? Where do people, where might they bump into you in person?
Well, do a lot of stuff around the Chicago area. I'm in a lot of different tech and startup groups. Do a lot of that. There's a couple WordCamps that I'm going to try to get out to this year, a couple more. I don't have any. Usually I go to a couple major marketing conferences, but I haven't been to any of those this year. But, go to a couple Midwest WordCamps, you'll probably bump into me. I'm going to try to swing a couple more.
Cool.
You'll find me on vacation in Florida in a couple weeks. That'll be nice.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Right on. That's amazing. So how about some other recommendations for guests that we might have on the show?
Well, have you had Carrie Dills on?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had Rafal Tamal, the designer?
No.
Extraordinaire. Okay. I would say Rafal is a good one. Oh gosh, there's so many. I'm drawing a complete blank now on like the list of about a dozen people who I would say.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So, what are some interesting projects that are on your horizon that you're kind of excited about? What's next to focus on?
I have to get my starter plugin app, the one using Gulp, out there on GitHub. It's not out there yet, so I want to get that out and have it where people can use it and start giving me some feedback on it. I do have a couple ideas for. I have about a half a dozen WordPress plugins that do miscellaneous things that are either half written or developed, and literally the only thing that's kept me from really putting them out there is I haven't written the README stuff yet, or any any helps or any documentations to find. They all just need some kind of finishing touches on them to get them out there. Just some miscellaneous stuff, nothing too groundbreaking. Other than that, I think my website is a big one, and I do have another project this is the other podcast one that I was researching on. It's Opening Act, which is kind of growth hacking and content marketing for the DIY entrepreneur type people who have a product or an app or a service or a site or whatever it is, and they're trying to build their audience. It's really about audience building, but they're not quite to the point where they can hire an agency and hire 5 different agencies to do 5 different things. So it's really, because when I was running my own business, I did all the marketing, I did everything, and I enjoy that side of it, and I did that for a lot of my clients too. So it's really kind of a more educational way to teach people of how to build and grow their audience. So, mix of growth hacking and content marketing for kind of those early stage entrepreneurs.
Here's a tough question for you. Favorite guitar player?
Oh, gosh. Well, I have a few. Steve Vai's up there, Slash, a lot of the old blues guys. I was a huge B.B. King fan. Angus Young, Joe Perry. Yeah, I've been having to listen to all the Prince lately, and just probably one of the more underrated guitar players out there, I think, but he was really good.
For sure. Yeah. So what kind of style do you like to play?
I play mostly blues style. Hard rock with that kind of bluesy influence on it too, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I live in Chicago. You have to play the blues, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Blues, yeah.
We have an annual blues fest here in our little town, and usually the headlining acts always hail from Chicago.
Yeah.
It's always a special event. Yeah. So we are just about running out of time, Mike, here. So it's been an awesome discussion. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with everyone before we kind of call it a night?
No, not particularly. Just, I wanted to say I appreciate you asking me to come on and be a part of the show. It's been fun.
Yeah, feel free to share the name of your podcast if people want to check that out, and any other ways that they can find you online, your website, and so on and so forth.
Sure. The best way to, if you want to get in touch with me, is on Twitter at Mike Hale. I made it easy for everybody, but I also have an easy name. Not too many people out there with it. I do fight with there's a musician and a sheriff that I'm always fighting for anything Mike Hale. My website's mikehale.me, the new and improved. And if you're interested in writing and the technology of writing, typehammer.com. You can subscribe to the Typehammer podcast, and then keep an eye out for openingact.fm. That's the growth hacking content marketing podcast newsletter project should launch sometime this year. Should have launched sometime last year, probably the year before that. I don't know how long I've been kicking it around, but I do hope to get a little more out with that. So that's out.
Fantastic, Mike. Hey, it's been a great discussion. Episode 101 was awesome, despite my best efforts to wreck it early on in our first attempt. But thank you for being such a good sport about it, and for all of your really, really great answers. I really appreciate your insight. You're a man of many talents. You've got a lot of great experience in our industry, and just had so much good stuff to share. So I'm really grateful that you took the time out of your evening to join me. And I really look forward to seeing you again soon, probably at some upcoming events this summer. Anything in the Midwest, you will probably see me at. And so let's hang out again soon. All right, buddy?
Anytime. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Sure.